Hi there, this is Andy Brassington. So we have some questions from the webinar the other night, which I'm going to run through now, take them one at a time. So the first question is from Mark Bradley, and he asks, I want to be a 3D artist, but as of now, I don't have the money to afford software like ZBrush or Mudbox for sculpting. Will learning the sculpting skills in a program like Blender be useful, or does the program need to be industry standard to be hired in the film industry? Okay, that's a good question. What I would say is that ideally you want to be using the softwares which are being used in the industry. Different post houses will favour different softwares. You may find that some places do actually use Blender. It's a difficult question in many ways because it's not a completely standardized industry, is it? Not everybody uses the same software to do exactly the same thing. So I think that of course it's helpful for you to practice and to learn as much as you can in Blender. And then if you can get a copy of ZBrush or a copy of Mudbox, then and then obviously try and do it in that as well. And it's more strings to your bow, as it were. So if you're saying that you can't afford the software at the moment, it might be worth getting in touch with the manufacturers of those, seeing if they do any student deals, or if you can get temporary licenses or trial licenses, and then try and do it like that. So I suppose, to be succinct, I would say that, of course, learning to sculpt in any program is better than not doing it in anything at all. So yeah, just learn as much as you can. Okay, next question is from Borja, and he asks, what would you recommend to a student who has film and graphic design studies and wants to get into VFX? Well, to be quite blunt, I would say you should try and learn some VFX programs, depending on whether you want to go 2D or 3D. So if you want to go 2D, then obviously I think it's important for you to learn Nuke, and if you want to go down the 3D route, then you should really start looking at Maya. These are the kind of courses that we do here at Escape, so the kind of intensive courses. I think that your background is probably quite typical, in the sense that we get lots of people at Escape who have done something related to film or design or graphics, even animation or visual effects at university, but they want to specialise. So I would say doing a course at Escape would be really good for someone like you. And then all of the other kind of knowledge and skills that you've got from doing your degree will of course be useful. But if you want to go definitely into VFX, then I think you need to have those specialist software skills as well. Okay, next question. How many different shots in a show reel? Well, we sort of covered this a little bit during the webinar, and I don't know if you remember, but I said that the person that had recently won our little competition at work for a show reel actually only had one shot on their reel. So ideally, you could say that you only really need one very good shot. If that's all you have, that's all you should put on. We always try to tell people not to put too much unfinished work or work that is not completely satisfactory onto a show reel, because it's often the case that you'll be judged on the worst shot on your reel. So, the answer to that question is don't put anything on there that you're not happy with completely, that isn't completely finished. And then if that is just one shot, then that's the way, then so be it, one shot. Obviously, as you get more specialised or more experienced, then you can demonstrate other skills that you have as well. So the next question asks, how easy is it to switch from the film industry to the video games industry? So as far as I know, it's not an easy transition to make. Since the way things are done in video games, the pipeline is different. It's very different to what's done in film, as far as I know. I've never worked in video games, but people that I do know who've worked in video games tell me that it's not the same. It's not the same system. So I think a lot of it is to do with the level of realism, the amount of polys that you use in things, the textures, the lighting, etc. So I would say that I suppose really you choose one or the other, I think, as much as I know. So the next question says, may I please ask, how bad is it if someone applies for more than one position in the same VFX studio? For example, for Roto artist position and a compositor or matchmover. Okay, well, the simple answer to that is, if you have those skills, if you can roto to a high level, if you can composite to the level that they're looking for, and if you can matchmove to the level that they are looking for, then there's no reason why you can't apply for any of those positions, or all of them. So I think it's as simple as that, But really, I don't think it's worth applying to do a job if you don't feel confident that you have got the skills to sort of hit the ground running. Okay, the next question is from Dan, who says, I'm a second year visual effects student and I really want to get a taste of the industry. I have the opportunity to do a placement year between my studies and I'm looking at working in London. Do you have any tips for someone who has very little experience but a lot of passion for the industry? Okay, so this is quite a common question, and I think that you have to be persistent and organised, really. It's really not as easy as it used to be to get a placement or an internship. The competition is really high. I think that obviously you need to try and line something up as early as you can. And another sort of major factor is that you need to think about how much it's going to cost you to live in London as well. If you're staying at home, if you live in London or close by, that's going to make things easier. But if you don't, you're going to have to start to think about renting somewhere, a room. It's going to cost you quite a lot of money. You've got to think about travel. The chance that if you're on an internship, you might not get paid. So that's a massive obstacle in many ways, I think, to people. It might not be that you can do a whole year in one company. Maybe you line up lots of smaller work experience weeks here and there with different companies. I think you might find it quite hard to do a full year on a placement, but of course it's worth finding out, writing into all of these post houses and explaining what you want to do. But I think that you probably need to just be quite persistent. Which operating system is most commonly used in work in VFX industries? As far as I'm aware, the most common is Linux and Windows. So Linux being the most popular. So I think that if you can understand Linux as well, that's going to be a real benefit. Next question: do you recommend any other compositing applications to learn other than Nuke? I think if you want to work in film, then Nuke is obviously the most important one, and you should probably concentrate on that, and make sure that your skills are to a high level in Nuke. There are other compositing applications out there. Digital Fusion is an option, and you can also composite and do quite a lot of compositing techniques in After Effects. I think that, again, if you can use these programs, then that's great, but really I would say focus on Nuke and try to get as high a standard as possible using Nuke. Okay, so the next question here is from Theo, and he asks, outside of London, where else in the UK has a decent VFX presence? Okay, well, the answer to that is that there isn't. London is obviously the sort of epicenter of the VFX industry in the UK, but there are outposts in different cities and different areas of the UK, and it's becoming a bit more popular for post houses to open up in the regions and in other cities outside of London, because they can benefit from tax breaks. So for example, recently companies like, I think it's Milk, have gone to Cardiff. I think it's Cardiff. I'm speaking to I know a few VFX houses that are looking to open outposts in Scotland, in Glasgow, for example. Again, this is mainly because they can take advantage of tax breaks. I think that you'll probably find small post houses in lots of the bigger cities in the UK, but I would imagine that they will be generally working on smaller projects, and they're probably not working on film projects as much as the ones in London are. So, you know, they do exist, but in reality, the main kind of collection of firms is in London, really. Okay, the next question is, in the industry, are you paid by week or day by day? The answer to that is that it can depend. It depends. You may just be hired on a day-by-day basis for a particular job. Your contract might be for a week or 2 weeks or a few months, or it might be for 12 months. So this is, you know, it depends. But what we do advise people is to have an idea of what their day rate would be. So for example, a junior artist may sort of charge between 80 to 120 pounds a day, and as you get more senior, you'll be working up towards, say, 150, 175, 200, 250, 300 is kind of the top level, I would say, really, 350. So obviously you just kind of extrapolate that day rate. So if you're on a 5-day job for a week, then you know that's how you would get paid. You'll normally get paid at the end of the week or at the end of the month, depending on who you're working for. It's quite common that you'll have to invoice in that situation. So actually, you may have to wait about up to a month for the money to get paid. But I suppose the short answer to that question is that it's important for you to have an idea of what your day rate would be, and then you would just times that day rate by the amount of days that you've done for that particular contract. Okay, the next question is, what elements should a good showreel for a generalist job contain? Well, the first thing to consider there is whether you're a 2D generalist or a 3D generalist, or even perhaps a all-round visual effects generalist, so if you can do 2D and 3D as well. I think the simple answer to that is that you would basically want to show that you can go through the entire pipeline. So, say for example, if you're a 3D artist, you want to show that you can model, that you can texture, that you can light, that you can render. If you're a 2D artist, you want to show that you can do roto and paint and clean up work, and that you can actually composite 3D elements into a live action plate. And if you're all three, you know, if you want to be 2D and 3D, then I guess you want to show that you can do all of that. But the reality is that even as a generalist, you may favour one particular discipline over the other. So, you know, it might be that you can model, but you don't really enjoy modelling, or that you can, you know, you can light things, but you don't really enjoy doing it that much. So, I think that essentially you just want to put your strongest skills onto the showreel and show what you can do. You know, the more skills you've got, the better. That's the simple answer, really. How complex should models be to demonstrate modelling skills? Okay, that's a good question. I think what I would say to that is that you want your models to be as complex as they need to be to actually replicate what it is you're trying to show. In other words, you don't want to make things overcomplicated, but you don't want things to look too simple. So it's just a question of, you know, you model something according to what it's going to be used for, how big it's going to be in the shot, you know, how's it going to be used in the scene? Is it something that needs to be broken apart, or is it just going to be a static object? So I think essentially, it's not really about how complex things are, it's whether they're fit for purpose or not. There's no point in doing something which is incredibly complex, which has got millions of polys in it, if it's going to be, half a centimetre high at the back of the frame and on camera for about 10 seconds. It's probably not worth doing a really, really intricate model. What you are tasked with doing as a modeler and a VFX artist is basically kind of how can I say it, doing the best possible job in the shortest amount of time, really, without things, but maintaining an amount of quality which allows the viewer to basically be fooled by what you've made. So, it's not really a question of how complex things are or how amazing your model is. It's whether it's actually fit for purpose. So, I mean, obviously, if you can make really intricate models, then that's fantastic, and that's going to demonstrate your skills. But you don't need to make things harder for yourself, I don't think. Is it viable for people to live off a runner's salary renting a flat, a room in London? Okay, so really good question, and I guess it depends on exactly how much you're getting paid. I think a runner's salary is going to be in the region of sort of £18,000 a year, probably. If you consider that a room in a shared flat is going to be somewhere around at least £400-500 a month, plus your travel, food and other expenses, then it's going to be really tight. I would say that yes, it's probably possible, but you're not going to be having lots of spare cash at the end of the month. It will be difficult. Much easier if you've got friends or family that you can stay with, or people even share rooms. It's quite brutal, to be honest. It's not easy. It's not an easy city to live in that sense. I think it's probably possible, but you'd have to do your sums and you need to work out exactly what you're going to need to spend, each month to get by. But yeah, it's hard. It's definitely hard. Okay, the next question is, do you think that you have to refresh your showreel yearly, and the ideal time length for the showreel? So, okay, I mean, of course, it's good to be continually doing new stuff and putting it on your reel. If you are applying for a job in a post house that you've already sent your showreel to in the past and they've seen the work that you've got, then obviously there's not that much, there's less point in sending in that reel again for them to consider, because they'll already have it on file. Refreshing your show reel and putting new work on there, especially if it shows a progression of skills, is obviously a very good excuse for you to be able to send it out to a company again and say, hey, look what I've done recently, what do you think of this? So yeah, I mean, you want as much new stuff on your reel as you can, really, but obviously you have to maintain the quality as well. The ideal time length for the show reel is, I would say that ideally, I would say a minute and a half, 2 minutes max. Again, it depends on the quality and the quantity of the work that you've got and the skills that you want to actually show. So I think as a rule of thumb, you want to keep it as short and sweet as possible, and you're just kind of tantalizing people and showing them a quick insight into the skills that you've got, but no more than 2 minutes, I don't think, personally. What's the average age of someone entering the VFX industry? I think that anecdotally, I would imagine that it's somewhere in the early to mid-20s. It depends, but that doesn't mean that people don't enter it at a later age, or even some people at a slightly earlier age. I suppose on the whole, if you've gone through life in the normal way, you probably will have gone to uni and done something, perhaps a VFX related course or something slightly different, and that's going to take you into your early 20s. It might be that you've worked in a different industry for a couple of other years, or you may have come to somewhere like Escape Studios and done a course. So, looking around in our studios, I suppose the average age of the students is early to mid 20s. But it's not unheard of for people to enter the industry in their 30s and 40s. I suppose 40s is getting on a bit really, but late 20s, early 30s as well. I think if you've got a passion for something, though, you shouldn't allow your age to put you off. I wouldn't get hung up on how old you think other people are and whether you've left it too late. If you've got the skills and you've got the application and the desire and the passion to do it, then it shouldn't really matter too much.
Maybe this is off topic for today's agenda, but I'm working as an IT technician stroke administrator, which is a pretty general description maybe, but what's the best way regarding IT jobs to get into the VFX business? Okay, so, I've spoken to a couple of my colleagues about this, and what they basically said is having a knowledge and experience of Windows, Mac and Linux is a must really. Linux is a highly used program or interface, I guess, in the industry, so knowing that operating system in particular will help. In terms of VFX specific software, companies usually ask for knowledge on the main apps used, which are basically Maya, Nuke, etc. PF Track or Mari or whatever VFX softwares are being used at that post house. They say it's not essential, but it'll definitely give you an edge. Also, experience in licensing software using RLM or FlexM would help, whatever that is. Another colleague said that experience with scripting languages such as Python and Perl and an understanding of distributed rendering would be valuable to an employer. So I hope that makes sense to you, because it makes virtually... No, it does make sense to me, of course it does. So I hope that's answered your question. Okay, next one. Do VFX companies look for realistic renders in the work, or do they look for the techniques used to finish the shot more? Like if, let's say, I can't afford better renderer and I'm using a free renderer instead, will that be okay? Okay, I think the main point is that they want to see realistic renders on your show reel. So I don't know what renderer you are using or what kind of results you're getting, but essentially I think one of the big mistakes that a lot of people make is that when it comes to their final render, they've got something that looks quite stylized or looks quite kind of VFX-y, a bit plasticky maybe. So it's all about getting realistic textures and tones and shades and lighting in your piece. So I would say, actually, yes, they do want to see that you can render something to a photoreal level. And the best way to do that is to practice. So, okay, this is quite a long question about software versions. So, with Maya 2016 being so different from 2015, how can we expect to stay current with the new software versions? With me learning 2015 now and basing my skills and work around it, what if I go to an interview and they expect me to know 2016? And by the time I finish getting used to 2016, 2017 is released. Okay, so I think that the way to answer that question is to say that normally when upgrades are done, the interface hasn't changed that much, but I know that is a bit different with 2016 and Maya, and quite a lot of things have changed. Obviously, it's always better to be as current as possible, and if you can use the most up-to-date software, then that's fantastic. But what you might find is that a lot of studios, just because they've released a new version, doesn't mean that they're using it, and often they'll be one or two versions behind. They might have a particular version that they like. So it's a very good question, and it's a difficult one to answer in many ways. I suppose ideally you would want to be a person that was a master of all the different software applications, and then it doesn't really matter where you work because you'll be up to date. So I think what you should do really is try and find out who is using it, perhaps. There's no harm in getting in touch with someone from the post house and say, look, can you tell me what version of Maya are you using at the moment? then you tailor your show reel accordingly. So yeah, it is a problem, and it's never nice for people when versions are updated. But like I say, I think often the new versions and the upgraded software is normally just things are refined and added a little bit rather than a whole change around. So I hope that answers the question. I suppose also, if you can demonstrate that you can master, say, Maya 2015, and you actually demonstrate your skills using that software, then people are going to know that you're a good VFX artist. And even if you aren't particularly au fait with their current tool, they may say, look, this guy's got talent and all he needs to do is be trained on a new software. So, we're prepared to give you a chance on that basis. So what are the skills required for crowd simulation? There are a number of softwares on the market which focus on this. Massive is one that I know is used quite a lot in the industry. But it's worth having a look around and seeing what else is new on the market. Some VFX companies will use their own software, their own proprietary software, which you wouldn't be able to access unless you were working there. So I think the best thing to do is have a look around, see what's on the market at the present time. And it's always worth, I think, getting in touch with VFX companies and asking them outright, can you tell me what you use for crowd sims at the moment, and is it something that I can access? Okay, the next question is, how much compositor skills does a 3D artist need to know for a job in smaller studios, for example? Okay, again, this is a bit of a how long is a piece of string kind of question, in the sense that you could just be a very, very proficient and excellent rotoscoper, and if a studio was looking for someone to fulfill that role, then you could certainly apply. However, if they were looking for someone who could comp 3D assets into live action and fit it in seamlessly, and that was something that you couldn't do, then obviously, you're not going to get the job on that basis. So, like all questions, many of these questions that we've got, it's all about really seeing what your skill set is, working out what you're proficient in, and what you think or hope or know that you could apply in a professional environment, and then you apply for those jobs. It's very often the case that that once you get your foot in the door at a company, that you will learn a lot more on the job. That's how it always used to work. You could go in as a runner, perhaps, and over time you would build up your skills just by being around the other compositors or the other VFX artists. I think these days that to get your foot in the door is harder, but it's certainly still the case that you will learn a lot more, or you will continue to learn new techniques and skills when you're actually in a company. There's a question here about Matchmove software, which is the best software to learn, 3D Equalizer or PF Track. This is a very good question, and it's something that we have thought about here at Escape. In the past, we've taught 3D Equalizer, and we've taught PF Track. I think at the moment we are on 3D Equalizer. But really, the answer to that question is that the software packages often do very similar jobs, and it's just really a case of what's being used most commonly in the industry at that time, and that's the one that we tend to pick to teach our students. So again, it's worth trying to find out who uses which software, and then you make a decision on which one you want to learn. I do know a lot of people who consider themselves tracking artists will actually learn, as many different tracking softwares as possible. I think that once you can track in one and you understand the principles of how to perform the operation, then to learn a new software is not too difficult. So to answer that question, I would say that it's debatable which one is best. It's all about, getting the job done, and the amount of money it will cost, etc. These are the kind of decisions that VFX companies make. And there's more than one tool for that, is the short answer. Okay, there's a question here which says, do the companies know that as a beginner stroke junior, you still have to learn stuff? I get the feeling that the companies, especially in Germany, just hire you if you already know anything about your job. There is no free space to grow and learn, in my opinion. Okay, this is very similar to a question we had a minute ago about what skills do you need to start working. And it's a difficult question in a sense because obviously you need to have some skills which are going to be useful to that company for them to employ you in the first place. They're not going to take you on so that you can just sit there and learn the software. But what would happen, and what does happen, is that over time, by working with more experienced artists, you're going to pick up new techniques and new skills from them, and that will soon be incorporated in the way that you work. So it's not that they want you to, they're not going to hire a junior artist who has the skill set of a senior artist. That's just not going to happen. It's not an acceptable thing to happen. What they will hire you to do is the work of a junior artist. And over time, hopefully, by working with more senior artists, then your skill set will improve. But I don't think it's fair to assume or to expect that a company is just going to sit there and train you when they've got a job to do. It's all about delivering projects, and they just want someone that can hit the ground running, basically. So you do need to have certain skills to begin with, whatever they are for that particular job. And then once you're in, then hopefully you can learn more. Okay, next question. It says, hi guys, I'm currently working as an apprentice in the UK for a small company that produces animations mainly for engineering companies like Rolls-Royce and Siemens. I work as a 3D modeler and animator, but also produce simulations when required. I often see companies asking for applicants to have a certain number of years in TV and film production. Would my role at my company fulfill this requirement when applying to companies? Okay, well, the simple answer to that is, well, no, because you haven't. If they're asking for someone who's worked in TV and film and you haven't, then obviously you haven't. That's the kind of blunt answer. But I wouldn't let that put you off. If you've got some animation skills and you've got some good 3D modeling skills, then there's no reason, I don't think, that you couldn't apply for certain positions. But a lot of it would be, the question would come to what kind of software you're using. Mostly in the industry they use Maya. So if you were using Maya in your present role, then there's no reason why you couldn't apply for a job in the VFX industry. But I think it's just a case of being honest about who you are, what you've done, what skills you've got, and then trying to make that sort of leap across, or that move across. You may find that you have to work in a slightly more junior position than you're currently working at, perhaps, in order to basically get your foot in the door. But once you've done that, then hopefully, your skills will shine through and you'll be able to make that progression. And then obviously once you've got one or two film and VFX credits on your showreel, then it will be a lot easier for you to apply for other jobs. So it's not an impossible transition to make by any means. It's a perfectly doable thing, but I think you obviously have to just be aware of what they're looking for and what you've done and how you can work in their company. There's lots of transferable skills as well. Being able to work in teams, being able to deliver on time, just generally understanding how the workplace operates and works that's an advantage for you. You are already working. You've already worked for big companies and big brands, and that's something that will definitely go in your favour. So, what you may not have on one side of the coin, as it were, i.e. the VFX or the film credits and experience, then you may have lots of other kind of advantages on the other side of the coin in terms of your current job. So I hope that answers your question. Is it possible for an editor with some compositing experience already familiar with television post-production to enter as a VFX editor? Could you describe more about this role? Okay, again, like the question we had earlier about somebody coming from a different industry into the VFX industry, I think that obviously as long as you've got the skills that are required in that job, then a lot of these things can be transferable. A VFX editor is really the person that's going to assemble the shots and get things ready for the daily session perhaps, and put it all in order so that the reviews can happen. It's going to be a different type of experience in different companies. Everybody works differently, but essentially editing VFX kind of footage is not very much different from editing TV footage. Okay, the next question is, what are the skills required to become an FX artist to get a job in a VFX studio? Right, well, that is a massively broad question. I think it depends. First of all, I would say, do you want to be a 2D artist or a 3D artist? I think if you want to work in 2D, then you need to learn Nuke to a high standard. You need to be able to do Roto work, paint and clean-up work, and then move on to higher level compositing. And if you want to work in the 3D side of things, then you need to learn Maya, really, and you need to know how to model, you need to know how to light and texture and render. And if you want to be an animator, then I would say you probably need to learn Maya and learn the animation side of Maya. So, that's a hugely broad question. I suppose one positive way to answer that is that there are many, many different sorts of jobs as a VFX artist, and I would urge you to have a look at the Escape Studio's careers guide, which can give you some ideas of those kind of jobs and the way that you can progress in your career. So good luck with that. Okay, I am a recent master's graduate, and my interest relies on compositing. I'm looking forward for my first step to get into the industry. What kind of work does the industry look for from the recent graduate, and what kinds of work can I show in my showreel? Also, could you mention how long a compositing showreel needs to be? Okay, that's a very long question, very big question. So let's just answer that by saying, in our experience, this is a skills-based industry, and what they would be looking for is that you have good compositing skills, and I would say that they would want you to demonstrate those skills in the software package Nuke. As a junior artist, you would probably start in a more junior role as a Roto and prep kind of position, and essentially they would want to see on your showreel that that's what you can do. So the very simple answer to that is you need to find out what kind of jobs are available, and then you need to tailor your showreel accordingly. So if you're applying for a job where it's Roto and green screen work, then you need to demonstrate that you can do Roto and green screen work. It's as simple as that, really. You just need to show them what they want to see. In terms of the length of the showreel, I don't think that that's particularly important. A minute and a half of very good work is normally a good standard, but if you've only got 30 seconds of work to show, then just show that. It's always good in a showreel to show the breakdowns and to show the different layers that you've applied and different techniques. So my advice would be to show the shot first and then show the workings of that, how you got to that end result. I hope that's helpful. Okay, this is a good question. When aiming for a runner position, what kind of practical skills are usually desired? Further, even if I know certain softwares, I've been told that it's basically disregarded because I did not learn them while in the field. If that's the case, how much of my own time, money and energy should I exert to learning software? Okay, well, I'd be interested to know who said that to you, that they would be disregarded. I don't think that that's true at all. I think that obviously as a runner, your main duties are going to be to actually, to run and to get things for people and to be useful on that level. It may be the person that said that to you didn't know the software as well as they thought they did, They may have learnt things incorrectly. They may have learnt things wrong. In our experience and the way that Escape Studios works is that we equip our students with the necessary skills that they need to work as a VFX artist, as a junior. Now, they may not necessarily get to apply those skills when they're working as a runner, and they need to basically earn their stripes and work their way up to that position. But I don't think that I don't imagine for a minute that that having the correct skills is going to be is going to work against you. So, you know, to answer that question quite plainly, in a sense, that the skills that you need as a runner are generally the ability to service clients with food and drinks, to be useful around the studio on all manner of things. You know, it might be that you are unpacking a load of boxes one day, or that you are having to go out and, I don't know, buy a new Wacom tablet for someone that's broken. Or there's all sorts of jobs as a runner. They're really important little jobs, but they, you know, you're not necessarily going to be using your VFX skills as a runner. It's only when you progress into a junior artist role that you can start to use these skills. Okay, the next question is, do studios tend to help runners with travel costs? The answer to that question, unfortunately, is no. They will pay you a wage, and then you will obviously pay your own living costs out of that wage. I suppose you could perhaps that question is asking, if I don't get paid, will they pay with my travel costs? It might be that in some situations, if you're working on a short-term contract, maybe in a small company or in a film, you won't actually get paid, but you'll just get your travel costs paid. So, you know, it's not something I generally like to see. I think people should be paid for the work that they do, whether they're a director or a runner. So, you know, in theory, if you're working as an employed runner at a company, then you'll be earning a salary, and it's that salary that you will use to pay for your own travel costs. Okay, so the question here is, do you ever find that some things like asset generation fall through a little bit into post, especially if there are new things that pop up during the shoot? I mean, that's a very good question, actually. And of course, yes, things always pop up during the shoot. Producers and directors and VFX supervisors will plan their production with as much detail and accuracy as possible. But there's always going to be something that changes. There's always going to be something that hasn't worked, doesn't look right. The director changes his mind. The client changed their mind about something. So, yes, asset generation is something that normally happens at the start of the project, but it could quite easily happen towards the end of the project if they want to put in a new shot. So, yes, I think that with all the planning in the world, you know, you can't plan for the unexpected. And things do happen sometimes. Clients may change their mind, the brief may change, and so all of the asset generation that you have done at the beginning of the project, some of it may become invalid. You may need to change models, and then obviously that will happen as soon as it's known. So, you know, it's not a straight line, the whole production process. There are feedback loops which occur. Are there mostly staff jobs or freelance, or a combination of the two? Is it all on-site work at a VFX studio, or is there any remote or telecommunicating work in VFX? Okay, that's a good question. I think that it's fair to say that most VFX artists work on a freelance basis. There are staff jobs which exist for various types of person across different levels. But generally speaking, a lot of people work freelance and they'll move around from company to company. Most of the time, I would say that you are asked and required to work on site at the studio, but also there is the possibility for people to work remotely. You know, people have different reasons for that. Some people have families, or they've moved, or, you know, there's any amount of reasons. But on the whole, I think that you would prepare yourself, especially as a junior artist, to working as a freelancer on contracts of different length. It could be a day, it could be a week, it could be a month, it could be 6 months, it could be a year, and that you would generally be working in the studio with the rest of the team. Okay. I have 14 years of experience producing creative work in After Effects, Comp and FX for medium to large companies. If I want to move and work with companies like the Mill, Framestore, etc., and want to work on high-end projects like film, what would I need to do? Okay, the answer to that question is that the Mill, for example, I know in the Mill Studio does use After Effects on some of its jobs. So it's a question really of trying to get your foot in the door, I suppose. If you want to work on film projects, then the reality is that you probably have to learn Nuke. So, do, for example, a course at Escape Studios, you know how to composite already. You understand the fundamental principles of compositing, I would assume, from what you've written. So therefore, it would be good for you to learn the actual software which is being used on films. You may be able to get your foot in the door fulfilling other kinds of role within that within a company, like the Mill Studio, for example. You might be working on promos or in-house comms or something like that. But the reality is you're not going to be able to move across into the film world if you haven't got the skills of that particular software. So what I would say to you is, definitely ask around and see what the situation is, but think seriously about learning Nuke. Okay, the next question here is, what's the entry route if you want to be a lighting TD? Plus, what do you recommend concentrating on learning? I know photography is important, but was wondering what else you recommend. Yeah, I think photography is definitely a good thing to understand. It's all about light at the end of the day. It's about painting with light. I think it's important. It would be good for you to understand film stock and digital kind of formats, lenses, composition. It's basically understanding how light works, really. And then obviously I think that you would need to be able to master those techniques in Maya. The entry route might be as a junior, kind of a junior TD. It does happen, but you may find that you have to just try and get your foot in the door doing anything in the studio, Start as a runner, you may be working on matchmoving or something like that, but I think that all of the extra skills, the artistic skills that you can learn are definitely going to help you when it comes to following that career aspiration. Okay, so there's a question here. How permanent are jobs in the VFX industry? Do they involve a lot of moving from company to company and finding different contracts when your existing one expires? I would say that this is quite a common thing that happens. Lots of people will be working on a freelance basis, and they will go from project to project. Some people like this, they like the change, they like working in different companies. And I think over time that once you've built up a kind of relationship and a rapport and a good working kind of relationship with particular companies, you might find that you have your favourites and they may favour you as well. So I think at the beginning of your career, it's important to understand that you probably will be moving around to different places, and over time you can find out what works best for you. But saying that, even experienced artists are happy to move from one place to another. There are permanent jobs in the industry. They do exist. It's just a question of whether it's on offer for you at that particular time and if it's something that you actually do want to do. So, there's a bit of everything. Can you tell me any common mistakes that newcomers make when trying to get into the industry, and also things that I wished that I'd known back when I was starting? Okay, so I asked one of our tutors about this actually, and she said that one thing that she'd wished that she'd done more of at the beginning of her career was to be more inquisitive about the techniques that her colleagues and her leads and supervisors were using to help solve creative problems. She said that she eventually realised that the more tips and tricks that she could learn and share with her team, the faster she could get a shot to look better. She goes on to say that she thinks a lot of artists tend to be shy in their first jobs. So for some people, it takes a lot of effort to chat with other people and to share knowledge but once you do this, the whole job becomes faster and it actually becomes more fun. So what she says is be inquisitive, and show that you are really interested and dedicated to creating, cool stuff. So, I think it's a very common thing to hear that people, when they're young, they can be a little bit precious of the work that they've done, and nobody likes to be criticised, particularly, I don't think. So the temptation is to kind of not say anything, keep your head down, but working in a team, being part of a team, sharing your knowledge and listening to the knowledge of other people is really important. So I think that's a really good answer. I think common mistakes that people make when trying to get into the industry is, one thing that you could say is that people tend to assume that just because they have certain skills, that they're going to be able to use those skills in a job. It may be that you are only required to do a certain tasks, certain things on your job, and you may find that a bit frustrating. But that's the working world, unfortunately. So I think that having realistic expectations of where you fit into a production or a team is something that's very easy to not quite understand when you start out. So I think just to be patient. Okay, there's a question here that says, as for qualifications, do foundation art and design diplomas get you into the industry, or are more specific degrees required, specifically for compositing 3D artist roles? Okay, I would say that specific skills are required, not particularly specific degrees, it's specific skills. Having a good foundation in art and design is definitely worthwhile, but you need to be able to show that you have got the skills that you can apply your artistic vision with, and generally speaking on film, that's basically photorealism. So depending on whether you want to be a 2D artist or a 3D artist, you need to have the skills, and those skills are in the relevant software packages, whether it's going to be Maya or Nuke or Houdini or PF Track or Mari or Houdini. I think I've said that already, but it's a skills-based industry at the end of the day. Okay, there's a good question here. It says, hi, I qualified in CG animation in 2011, and since I've had a few health issues, especially in mobility, starting as a runner would be difficult, but I have been trying to improve on my 3D modelling skills. Okay, I would say that it's common for people with disabilities or with health problems to be able to declare that at an interview. And I think that, obviously if you have got mobility problems, then nobody's going to expect you to be running around with cups of tea. I think that, that they would be sympathetic to your situation. But actually what you would need to do is show that you have got the 3D skills that are necessary for a junior position to be able to get into the company that way. If they can't employ you as a runner, then obviously, they need to find something else for you to do. So that might not be a particularly good pathway for you to take, the runner's pathway, unfortunately. Okay, question here says, if I'm starting from scratch on a showreel, what kind of shot should I make? Now, I would say that what you should make is a very good but quite basic shot. I think what you need to demonstrate is that you can apply certain techniques which a junior artist would be expected to do, and that you can apply them well and seamlessly. A common mistake is that people try and do a huge kind of movie shot or something that incorporates too many different techniques. They often make it too long, it's over ambitious. Nobody's expecting you to have remade transformers on your show reel. What they will be looking for is that you have the ability to execute certain kind of rudimentary tasks which are relevant to a 3D junior artist role or a 2D artist role. So a simple model, if you're doing 3D, a simple model which is well textured and is lit properly. It doesn't even have to move. You can just demonstrate that you can model, that you can light, and that you can render, you can texture. And likewise, on the 2D side, you don't need to be comping in a mega shot. You just need to show perhaps that you can key properly. That you can that you have a good understanding of rotoscoping. These are the kind of sort of basic skills that are going to get you that first job. So what I would say is keep it short, but keep it simple, but execute it to the highest possible level. There's a question here: is clay sculpting used very often anymore, or is it mostly digital now? So one of our tutors, Mark, he used to work as a special effects artist, so with real life things, and that was his background. But I know that obviously with the introduction of programs like Mudbox, that digital sculpting has become a much more kind of cost-effective alternative. So I think those jobs do exist. Real life prop making still exists in certain companies, but it's definitely becoming a much less used kind of solution. So have a look around, see who is still doing it. Maybe someone like Peerless, they may still be using those kind of old-fashioned techniques, but most big VFX companies these days will be using things like ZBrush or Mudbox for sculpting. Okay, there's a question here that says that I like to use my skills to create cosplay costumes and armor, e.g. Iron Man and Robocop, and would like a job in this field or this type of field. Where would this come in the pipeline? What skills do I need to highlight to get into this field? Well, so the way that I'd answer that question is to say that it sounds to me like you enjoy kind of modeling and sculpting. I don't know, you haven't said exactly which softwares you use, but for you it might be that you want to look at programs like ZBrush and Mudbox, and also obviously learn how to model to a high level in Maya. So I think those are the kind of skills that you need to concentrate on. There's a question here now which says, would you say networking has an impact on the recruitment process? And the simple answer to that is definitely yes. The more people that you know in the industry, in a good way, then that's only going to be a benefit to you. Whether it's how you hear about your next job from maybe social networking kind of communities that you're involved in, or whether it's just bumping into someone down the pub on a Friday night, or emailing someone that you know, or blah blah blah. This is a really kind of it's a very small industry in many ways, and people's networks are extremely important. So, it's always good to meet new people, go to events, and try and make as many new contacts as possible. However, saying that, I would say that you still need to have the skills, generally speaking. So, learn the skills, go to networking events, and hopefully you should make some progress. Okay, there's a question here, last question I think. Which is better, Maya or Houdini for VFX? It's a good question. I think that it's kind of a little bit horses for courses. Maya is obviously the most used 3D package in the VFX industry, and it's a massive package, and it has lots of different kind of things that you can do in there, from modeling to animating to creating particle simulations, etc. Now I know that some of our tutors here really like the kind of the particle sims that they can do in Houdini. It's quite a difficult interface, as I understand. It's not, it's better. It's quite hard to teach it to yourself, but I think that it's definitely becoming more popular in the industry. And if it's something that you've got in your kind of armory, then so much the better. But you might find that you prefer Maya for certain things, and that you prefer Houdini for certain other things. So it's just a question of finding the best tool for the job, whatever the job happens to be.